I'm Janice. I work at Villa Kaliman, and as you guys know, most of you know, I have a passion for codependency. It's what I am actually writing a book about, and I want to help you guys and as a collective process, understand, and learn how it impacts you and how we can collectively learn how to manage it more effectively so it doesn't impact you so greatly, you know? And there's Liz, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah. So I'm Liz, and I will be kind of moderating the chat. And if you want to have a question, or if you have a question, you don't really want to speak to the group, or you can just put it in there and I'll be sure to share it. I also posted the link for the reading tonight. And if you have any problems there with that, just let me know.
Yeah, and this will be the format. Every week we'll have a reading and hopefully it'll be thought provoking and we can discuss it and see what it brings up for you individually. Um, and how it applies to the codependency paradigm we're in. So that'll be the format of the group ongoing. Any questions right now while you guys are reading the reading? All right.
Should we go ahead and
I think we should go ahead and start.
okay.
And you guys can follow it.
Okay. So I'll open the reading and just read it out loud for us. Okay. Emotional addiction. And this is from Dr. Nicole LePera's book, How to Do the Work. When trauma is not properly addressed, it is left to drive our narratives and shape our automatic responses. Our mind and body become reliant on the strong physical response that comes from the release of neurotransmitters associated with that experience and solidify it in the neural pathways of our brain. In other words, the brain learns to crave the feelings associated with the trauma response. This is the loop of emotional addiction. In my childhood home, for example, stress and fear ruled. Those feelings bound us together and provided a stand in for emotional intimacy, which was largely absent. Instead of connecting authentically, we connected over drama and pain, frantically coming together over each new crisis. Mom's health, a rude neighbor. The downtimes, when we didn't experience these feelings, felt dull in comparison to the jolts of our outrage, fear, and anger. When I wasn't in the emotional addiction cycle, I didn't feel like me. My body became so accustomed to adrenaline, cortisol, and other powerful hormonal responses that I continued to unconsciously seek them in adulthood to repeat the emotional baseline established in childhood. Without them, I felt bored and agitated. Over time, as with other addictions, such as sugar or sex or drug or alcohol dependency, our body needs more and more intense experiences to receive the same chemical hit. Our subconscious leads us into situations where we can get that hit in increasingly powerful doses. Unpredictable relationships, news media that leave us feeling scared and angry, social media that allow us to pick fights online. This is why we are drawn to vent to friends and chronically complain. These behaviors help us remain in a heightened state. Non activated peace is dull and unfamiliar. Our body and mind seek the familiar, even if it is painful, and many of us are left ultimately feeling ashamed about and confused by our behavior.
Thank you, Liz.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a really powerful reading, and the reason I chose it so early on is it's like the underpinnings. Nobody talks about emotional disorder addiction, and it really is the crux and the beginning of all of our disorders, which is part of the codependency trap, because um, it's like it becomes the pathways, it becomes almost a part of us, this emotional addiction or disorder, whichever you want to call it. And it's like you don't feel like you if you're not in a heightened state, or you're not creating chaos, or you're not um, uh, sparking a fight with somebody when you're um, feeling bored. I mean, literally, you want that hit. We want that hit in a lot of different ways, and that's an emotional disordered process. Does that make sense to you guys? And so that's why it's important to read this at the beginning to understand it's like the core of the disorders that sprout from it. And I just wanted it to be discussed and examined and looked at. Um, so anyway, I hope you guys will share and discuss it and what came up for you and your understanding of it or lack of understanding, and we'll talk about it collectively. You know, it's our body and mind seek the familiar, even if it's painful, you know, and that's codependency is painful. We just don't realize it, how painful it really is.
Yeah, Janice, that line really stands out to me, of seeking. I like how she connects it all in the reading, the from what happens in our brain to how we seek that and how we come to know that as comfort. It's like, for me, well, this is just something that it reminds me of, is that, like, I struggle with depression, and that over time became like my comfort. Like, that's my usual. That's where I know that, even though it's not healthy, etc. I don't know, but yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely it's emotional intimacy we don't know because of emotional disorder. We are struggling to find emotional intimacy in our partnerships, our family, and ourselves.
Mhm.
Does anybody want to share? Come on, you guys.
I can share.
Oh,
Hi,
thank you.
Janice.
Hi,
How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for coming.
Yeah, my pleasure. It's interesting because today, my name is Milena, everyone. Um, Bear with me, my accent and my English. I'm from Brazil. I am a Villa Calima PHP, and today we had a group with Lexi, and they showed us a video of Gabor Mate, and he was talking about addiction, trauma, childhood, and how, when we're kids, we seek really is like attachment and authenticity, and because we're not really able to be authentic, we learn how to suppress our feelings and emotions, and do as we're told by our parents, and so we learn how to just hide these emotions and feelings, and then when we grow up and become adults, or teenagers and adults, we we continue to do that, but we lose ourselves. That's when we don't really know who we are anymore, and then comes that feeling of, trying to, like you do, Janice, you know seek out those things outside, either through abusive relationships, drugs, alcohol, and the connection there. I thought it was really interesting, and it's helpful to know this, in what it says on the text we just read, because it's by knowing that, it now it makes sense, so much sense, and it's easier to kind of know how to undo these things, or like to find healing and recovery.
Oh, I like that. Thank you so much. That was beautiful. Yeah, and I love Gabor Mate. He's an amazing uh, uh, guide. Um, I was just going to share something else that I feel is really important is that we, as you were saying, the trauma responses are so pervasive in us that we don't even recognize they're happening, and they're happening a lot all the time until you do recognize them. And we get a hit from that. I mean, literally, lots of different kinds of hit, but it's a jolt. It's an emotional craving that we don't even recognize that is happening in us, and that's why this is important to discuss. To how do you, um, first of all, become aware that you're craving that emotional response hit, that trauma response hit, and then how to heal that and find a connection to yourself in a healthy pathway, in a healthy way, you know? Anybody else want to share?
I have a question. Not sure if I can articulate this clearly. Um, I guess the mystery for me is, if I get that we're looking for that fix, why is it that we tend to be drawn toward something that's maladaptive to satisfy that fix? Is it a why? What's going on there? I don't know if that makes sense or not. Instead of getting a fix through, um, in some with some moderate, moderation, some kind of healthy thing. Why is it that there's a tendency to satisfy that hit with something that's going to, be a disservice to ourselves?
Right, that's a good question. I totally understand that, and it kind of is in that first couple of sentences. When we're growing up, there's I believe the first trauma we experience is birth. It's very traumatic. Um, and from there on, there's other traumas that happen when we're infants. We don't get our needs met. We might get neglected even if we have adequate parents. Um, and so those traumas, if they're not properly addressed, meaning that the parent or the caretakers aren't there to soothe you in a comforting way, which helps us learn to comfort ourselves, we stay in distress, we stay in anxiety, and we stay in fear. And those are the ways that we're experiencing it. So that's what we crave. It's not like we were raised in a way that we knew how to soothe and comfort ourselves, because then we wouldn't crave maladaptive processes. I don't know if that helps Cindy or not.
I think it did for a second, but then I think I lost it.
Okay.
So, um, that lack of feeling wanted or nurtured, or whatever that was that caused the distress. Why is it? I'm sorry, I'm just going to rephrase it the same way, just to see if if I can satisfy my curiosity even a little bit more. Um, if since that lack of, like I said, lack of being wanted, or something like that, feeling wanted, since that was the cause of that was the source of the distress, it seems, I don't know if the word is rational or logical or whatever, that we would seek uh, something that's going to solve that rather than exacerbate that distress. What's going on? I don't know. Is it emotionally or cognitively? Is it?
Well,
Is that a
Can I
different
can I
question at all?
first?
go
What was that?
for it.
Yeah, please.
Okay, because today we're talking about this, and I thought it made sense. Because when we're little and we're experiencing all these traumas, our body has releases all these chemicals like cortisol and endorphins, and all these chemicals are being released all the time in our bodies, and we kind of get addicted to those chemicals. And it says on this video that when you first use a substance, it's kind of mimicking that high that we get, from this substance that our body naturally releases. And then if it makes you feel this like good, and that's why they're so powerful and addictive. And that's why I guess we're drawn to these negative things, because once we try it the first time, we feel good, and in the short term, it brings these benefits, like it seems like it's something good, but in the long term, we see that it's not. I don't know if that kind of answers your question, but that's what I heard. It could be one of the answers today.
I think I get how that applies.
Yeah, Milena,
What if
Oh,
what if it's something that is more like the uh the response that is happening is that I'm drawn to like an abusive relationship.
oh, I'm so glad you asked because that's my perspective that I was going to share.
Oh, okay.
So I, as an emotional addict and someone who came from an abusive relationship, I feel like the answer to your question, why do you do it, is because you don't know. I didn't know any other way. I didn't know
Oh,
there was any other way.
I see.
So I guess I knew it wasn't right in a way, but it was the way that I lived. And what
Mm,
Milena is saying is makes so much sense because
hmm.
in hindsight, right now in recovery from, obviously codependency and also an emotional addict, I think that in hindsight, I look at it and I think it makes sense that it became progressively more. I needed more of that hit, so to speak, just like a drug, because it was constantly chaotic and I needed to fill my time. Otherwise, what was I doing? Right? It became so routine for me to be in this fight or flight mode that I wasn't doing anything. I wasn't living. I wasn't me if I wasn't doing that. And so that became my personality. It became my excuse. It became my validation because I was also a workaholic. So I was working my butt off and nobody knew that I was all of these things inside of my head and also acquiring an addiction to alcohol because that became the next step for me in creating these emotional waves that I could then commend myself for being able to manage. And it became just this, it was like accolades for dealing with all this crap and chaos became my way of living. And then if it wasn't enough to take care of all my crap and chaos, I had to take care of all their crap and chaos. And the more crap and chaos that they gave, the more I was like drawn to that hit that I was going to be able to solve or fix or create some kind of balance in a world that was clearly not balanced. And that was my life, frankly, for 25 years.
yeah,
um,
exactly. The,
and
the
so
addiction
that's my
is not
answer
just to
why.
drugs, it's to all addictive behaviors. It's to all of them.
I
Gambling,
appreciate you
sex,
guys.
and all
Thank you.
that.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
And I like this reading because again, it allows us to look at how it evolved in us and how to do it differently because it's maladaptive, as you were saying, Cindy. It's like we are now at a place that we can do it differently. We can choose to self-soothe. We can choose not to jump for the hit. And that's what this whole group is about, is learning how to have healthy coping skills and adaptive processes.
I want to share something that Stacy put in in the chat because I think it's very insightful and speaks directly to what you're talking about, Janice. And reflecting back on the in the moment feelings, it makes me feel in control and protecting myself. But in regulated hindsight, I see how out of control and desperate it feels when seeking that hit. You know, so this reading does invite us to really take a look closer, as Stacy does here, you know, in hindsight, and really, you know, invites us to do that.
Yes, Michelle,
Mhm.
you're muted.
I was trying to raise my hand, but that was way too complicated. What's coming to mind for me is that these repetitive behaviors that Cindy was talking about, be it, you know, maladaptive or actually survival, there's a difference, I think. I believe when we're born, we get a lot of stuff put on us. You know, even in the womb, we're energetically receiving stuff from the mother for sure. Maybe they can hear the dad screaming, you know, so this little thing is already getting traumatized in the womb by what's going on around it. So then you're born and you already have some trauma, and then you can kind of attach to those what you perceived as normal feelings when you were in the womb or a small child. So then you keep attaching to those feelings of less than, self-worth, and you operate on that frequency and that vibration, and therefore like attracts like. So you pull in more shit because you think you're shit, you know, or you're on the vibration of, you know, unworthiness. And basically, you're just kind of looking around for somebody to prove it to you again. And I think personally, until you can come to the spot, and it takes a lot of alone time, where you come to the spot and find yourself and find your own place, your own energetic level, then the things that are actually who you are will show up for you. You know, everything that is meant for you will come to you. It just, I think everybody has to find themselves first before they.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I
Did that help?
appreciate that. It
Okay.
did. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I wish it was simple. Some things are simple, but
No, it's not simple.
but no, it's how we get in our way, because some things are simple that we make complex. But just everything we're talking about is like to me, it's a pathway to recognize what's getting in our way, which is the reading, which is the emotional addiction. It's a beginning to disengage from it and find yourself, because if you're stuck in emotional addiction, you're never going to find that peace and serenity in yourself and healthy options. You're just not going to. So that's why I wanted to bring it up at first, just to see and give you like an outline of what we're going to discuss during this group moving forward, how to find healthy, adaptive, loving, nurturing parts to us that we didn't get. Julianne?
That's me. Hi, Michelle. I wanted, well, one, I have an analogy, I think, that I want to take a stab at sharing. But first, Liz, thank you for sharing your uh, part about depression, because I know that like one of my coping mechanisms as a kid was to be small, and like that's a safe place for me right now. And then I think Milena, having listened to some Gabor Mate today, he definitely links that depression to all the childhood things, and uh, he's amazing. Thank you for bringing him up. Um, but Cindy, when you asked your question, I was like, what's a good analogy for this? And I'm going to take a stab at this. But imagine there's a child, and this child is thirsty, and his caregivers, or her, we'll go with her because it's a women's group. Her caregivers aren't really, present. They're not understanding how to fill this child's thirst or need in a healthy way. And all they have around the house is like soda, right? Let's make it some orange crush. Um, as this child grows up, the only thing that this child drank every time they were thirsty was orange crush. And now this girl is growing up into adulthood, and she now has the choice of drinking water or drinking orange crush. Well, if you've had water after drinking soda for 2 weeks, it probably tastes really gross, and it's really hard to switch over. You could even substitute like mac and cheese and then Brussels sprouts, right? Like Brussels sprouts after mac and cheese, unless they're like cooked in a lot of bacon grease, or is not going to, like, the first time, they're not really tasty. And so that's kind of well, I guess that's my analogy, my stab at what we're experiencing.
That's really helpful. I appreciate that. Thank you, Jillian.
Thank you. Yes.
And just really quick, I also thought of an analogy when I was talking, and it was like, I was thinking to myself, if someone told me there was a better way to get somewhere, and I had been taking the longest route, like for all this time, and then all of a sudden they're like, Ashley, did you know, like you could just go that way? Then, like, to me, that was kind of the way I thought. I was like, gosh, that's so much easier. I wish I thought of that, but it just never occurred, right? Because I hadn't been given the tools, I guess, so to speak, the sense of self. And like Michelle so eloquently said, I mean, 100% spot on. I hadn't established the self-worthiness, or like yeah.
Yeah, and I liked your analogy, Julian. It's like self-love is the water, but we're drinking the orange crush, because we don't know. And we're going to learn to drink the water.
Yeah. Ashley, that was actually really great and made me think of a friend in high school who had to drive by her house. Like she had to leave from her house. So like she would come pick me up, then we'd go to her house to leave and go wherever we were going. That's the exact same thing. Like
I was
such
that
a
girl.
detour.
Yeah, thank goodness for Google Maps. Yeah. I was definitely that girl.
Well, that's another neat analogy. We're going to find the road map to ourselves. How's that? All
I,
right.
I
I
was
love
going to respond to Liz's question. How do we find the self-worth? I think it's, kind of simple. It's like doing esteemable acts and not expecting any recognition from them. Not looking for somebody to go, oh, good job, you put that shopping cart away. It's like you're making the choice to do the right thing regardless of just because you don't get a girl or whatever. Like you got to be the person that gives yourself that, like I did that today. I'm like, put the cart back. It's like, I don't know. I mean, no, stuff like that really, really helped me. And I still really have a hard time celebrating myself. So those silly little things, they have like a little click in my brain that's like, oh, you did something good, you did it for you, whatever that is, it keeps that pathway open to doing more good things. I don't know if that made any sense. I'm not making any sense today, so.
No, you are. Yeah, and the way to find self-worth comes from a lot of different ways and approaches. And that's what this group is about too, is trying to learn the way to connect to yourself so you feel better about yourself and not out here getting accolades, which come intermittently at best. But how do you give them to yourself? You know?
Yeah, I think that's one of the key aspects of codependence recovery is not looking outside of yourself really for anything, to be able to acknowledge your wins yourself, to like I really liked what you said, shared, Michelle, celebrating ourselves, being able to do that, being able to enjoy ourselves. um, and but yeah, doing all of those things that as codependents we're often looking outward for. Yeah.
I find it's also really good to, I, lots of very strange things happen to me, and I could either take them very seriously or I can laugh them off. Or if I do something that's like, okay, I'm gonna use the word stupid, right? That was stupid. I don't tell myself I'm stupid. I just go, oh, like I don't let that self-judgment step in even at the little level, because once the guy sneaks in, he can go, write a novel. So I have to make my mistakes my sort of entertainment, basically.
I like that. Does anybody else want to share that's being so quiet and respectful, but also I'd like to hear from you? Anybody else want to share?
We have a great share right now in the chat from Stacy. And I love it so much. She said, I find being gentle and tender with myself, a little less judgment is, with a little less judgment is a slow way to start. Less is truly more in terms of expectations. It's not a light switch. Yeah, absolutely. It takes time, grace, humor, and lots of desire to find it. Yeah, there's a lot of in that brief passage that it resonates with me. It's like that that tenderness, being tender with ourselves like that, um, and um, just being slow and easy and knowing like it's not a light switch. Just like addictions or codependency are a process, they're progressive is what I'm trying to say. It's like we need time to heal over time and doing the things that we're talking about. um so I really love that share, so thank you, Stacy.
Anybody else ready? I can see people thinking about
Uh-huh.
it.
I think that those shares really helped me because I've been struggling a lot. Um, and now that I came to this group, I'm realizing too that it is a lot of codependency because I am looking for that at a girl and like a lot of validation too. And it's been a really good reminder that I need to acknowledge myself and celebrate myself and not be looking outward for that, which is really refreshing to hear because I needed that gentle reminder because it's been a little rough. But yeah, I mean, I just really appreciate that a lot. It's helping me. So
Thank you. It's good to see you.
you too. I miss you.
I miss you too.
And yeah, absolutely. Like that's a big one, right? Really being able to acknowledge ourselves instead of getting that validation, to validate ourselves. Milena shared forgiving ourselves.
Mm.
Whew, that's a big one, right? Forgiving ourselves first, acceptance, connection to yourself and spirituality. And those are essential to, or important for some, to begin the healing process. Definitely essential for me. I know that to be true. But yeah, forgiveness.
Well, I'd like
Good.
to just speak to the emotional addiction is what separated us from early on to our spirituality, because our spirit is our connection to self. And if we're emotionally addicted and harming ourselves, our spirit is in distress. And how do you find that pathway to your own spirit, which is our salvation, which is our resilience, which is our self-love? And it's letting that spirit develop again and give it like water instead of orange crush.
That's such a great analogy. But yeah,
No, but it's really because I think the emotional addiction is what pushed the spirit down and not away, but it definitely impacted the spirit, its natural energy, its natural resources, its natural process of loving ourselves. So I like that spirituality part.
I think like Janice on that, the the thought of the like when I'm reaching for the orange crush, like there is a part of me inside that is like just beating me up, going like, no, that's not the best thing for you. And like whether or not I listen to it, it just starts to weigh on my shoulders. And I feel like I'm just starting to have some awareness about it. And then next thing I know, I think I'm doing good. And then I tear my meniscus and and I think that's the universe saying, like, hey, you're not learning your lesson. You're looking for external like accomplishment, productivity in order to have self-worth and settle down, Turbo. Like, what is it that you're here for? Like, why are you so hard on yourself? Why can you not just be happy? And I don't know, working on this part of my of it all. But anyways, yes, the spirit is always like, I feel like it's just in there fighting and trying
It is.
to
It's
get that water.
calling to us. It's calling to us. It's begging. It's our survival is connecting back with the spirit because it is the foundation. It's everything. But we got emotionally addicted and went down another path, but it didn't, our spirit hasn't left us, or you guys wouldn't be here.
and from my perspective, like we don't have to do anything. Like the spirit doesn't need us to prove its inherent worth. You know, it already recognizes, you know, that we are worthy.
We are.
Yeah, I think that's for me, at least in my spiritual path, that has been really, really important. I kind of grew up, well, not kind of, I did grow up in a Catholic kind of culture where, original sin and all of that stuff was very pervasive and to shift that now in adulthood and adopt a spiritual orientation that assumes my inherent perfection, I think was really has been important for me in my recovery from addiction and codependency as well. But I really like, I can't remember now who brought up the spirituality aspect of this, but I like that. So thank you.
Yeah, if, to me, the healing process for anything is connecting to our spirit and letting it um, guide us, connect back to us. It is the energy force. We're energy, and we are so in our heads, we are not attached to our sensory mechanism, which is our spiritual practice and connection to others, even in this group. It's the energy, it's not the words.
We had another comment in the chat that I think is really interesting too. I find this is from Stacy, who she left, but anyway, I'm going to share it. I find the most insidious way to poison ourselves is to become emotionally addicted to being the victim. Let me see. I lost it here. We are no longer victims. We have the awareness. We are all here. I love it.
It's lovely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So does anybody else want to share, because I feel like this is a good, again, foundation for next week. We'll expand on the path to healing. And, if we feel complete, does anybody else want to share? Are we complete? Thumbs up. All right. Thank you, guys. Thank you very much for sharing and being courageous.
Thank you, Janice.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Janet.
Thank you. Have a good weekend, everyone.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.